Hello, Michael. I'm so happy you're able to join me here today.
Hey, Sean, thanks for having us.
Hey, one of my favorite things about this business is that it's a business of relationships. And, the name Michael Barrett popped up, and I thought immediately to myself, that Michael Barrett? And I love that about our business, that you can reconnect with people that you've done business with. Neither of us should say how long ago that was, but how terrific it is that we get to, even under these conditions, come back together and reconnect, and how much the media world has just exploded from when you and I were a little earlier in our careers. What a ride it's been, huh?
Oh my God, trying to sell you like bleed charges at Newsweek, right in the Wild West when they started to negotiate rates. Yeah, it has been a heck of a journey. So good to see you on the screen.
Yeah, and I tell you, it's interesting conditions that we see each other, via video and not live. But such is way things are these days, and some good, some bad. It's been an interesting time. So in April 2020, a lot of CEOs are interesting, are leading companies in interesting times. You merged two companies in a pandemic. What was that like?
Yeah, well, I can say unlike anything I've ever done before. Mark Zagorski was the former CEO of Telaria. We started talking in the fall and got really excited about the concept of what these two companies could bring. And I know we'll get into that a little bit later on. But the idea was to try to get this over the finish line before the holidays, and we were successfully able to do that. And of course, then there's that period of time where you have to get regulatory approval, et cetera. And so it kind of flew through, and we timed it for the end of March so that the quarter would sync. And of course, everything that we know today happened, and it was crazy. I have to say, most of it was bad, right? Obviously, you don't want to not be able to see people in person and have celebratory events and move into offices together and create this, one culture for one team. But on the flip side of it, a lot of those culture issues are driven by offices, driven by where your office is located. We would have had two offices in New York, two offices in London, who moves, who does what. And it became so democratized over Zoom calls that some of the friction that you would normally have with the merger was kind of minimized. And the other aspect of it was we found ourselves initially thinking we'll be back in the office very shortly. So let's put off some of the harder parts of the integration. And heck, we'll even move them off until the fall. And then when it became evident that maybe we will be back in the fall at the earliest, we actually pulled it forward. And so in some ways, we've speeded up the integration of the teams and the product. So, you look for little silver linings anywhere you can with this kind of a backdrop. But yeah, it wasn't what we planned, but I think we've made the best of it.
Well, congratulations for where you are, some 90 days after, the start of this. This has been some ride for everyone. And you talked about the idea that, with respect to culture, that there may have been some, some friction that was removed in this environment. Give me one really pleasant surprise in going through this period of time that you look back and you say, wow, it's great that X worked out the way that it did.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be bigger things that will surface both pro and con when there's a return to some normalcy. My observations, like a kind of a daily tactical manner, is that any big announcement that we have, generally, I think it was in our culture, in Telaria's culture, to try to do it as much in person as possible. So, do it to New York, fly the next day, do it to LA, do it to the London guys, make sure the APAC guys are getting to see it live. And there's always this staggered approach to it. And you can't help but have some bruised feelings like, why did they do it in LA and not New York this time? And when you do it via video conference, it is as democratic as it gets, and everyone sees it day and date. And that has actually been something that has really surprised me. And I would imagine you've had some of the similar reactions. It wasn't like we didn't have a video conference culture, but we certainly had much more of a get everyone together, get in all hands, get them in the meeting room. And I'm really pleasantly surprised at how efficient and seemingly effective it is.
I'm finding that's interesting that, there's a lot of people that tops that are hard to get together, because one of the things, for me as well, I was always traveling. And
Yeah.
now finding that, a system where, you log in and everyone gets on a video call at 10:45, you're finding that, very few times do you have any breakage, which I think is great. You're getting a lot more eyeball to eyeball time, and you're getting it on time, and you're able to get things done because, frankly, people aren't in planes and hotels and conference rooms. And I think it's been a blast. Let's do a little role play here. So I want to look at your company and what you provide and what you guys are so good at from this perspective. Say I'm a large multi-screen TV media company. I've got a broadcast network. I got a cable network. I distribute my content to all screens. Obviously, in this environment, I'm looking to maximize ad revenue. What do you do that your company does that can make your company just a mission critical partner going forward? Tell me exactly from that perspective. I need ad revenue. I've got the goods. It's distributed, but enter your company. What's possible? Why should you be one of my critical partners?
Yeah, no, all great questions. Let's start back with the thesis of the deal. The idea was that publishers are looking to work with fewer partners that can do more for them. And ad tech is notoriously fragmented. And if you looked at the DSP space like 3 years ago, you would have seen a really fragmented marketplace there. But what you've seen after a bunch of acquisitions, maybe strategics buying a DSP and kind of taking it off the market, you've seen the rise of a strong independent player, the Trade Desk, that was able to fill that void and make buyers' decisions easier, simple, great go-to-market strategy, great product. And we saw a very similar parallel on the sell side of the business, that there's just too much fragmentation. Publishers have to work with too many different partners to try to maximize revenue. There's breakage, there's data leakage, there's a lack of transparency. And so we saw this real opportunity, and we're in the first inning of it as our combined company, to create this alternative, this independent omni-channel play, completely transparent, trusted, built on open source technology, that folks as publishers would have this alternative to some of the folks that they've had to work with in the past, because they were just so big. Even if they were competitors and they owned inventory, they would still be forced to kind of work with them because there was no other game in town. There were just a bunch of players that looked alike and were much smaller and couldn't meet all the publishers' needs. So that was the driving thesis. And so now when we go talk to those very same broadcasters, we obviously are very deep on the CTV OTT front. And by combining our assets with Telaria, there's even a greater desire on the buyer's part to concentrate on one platform where they can give more and more dollars to. So it's kind of this flywheel that creates that. Furthermore, for the publisher, although CTV is the most valuable inventory out there in terms of CPM, they have banners, they have audio from podcasts, they have web, mobile app, they have everything. And to have one partner not just be able to accommodate that, but to be able to work with them on the buy side and place a buy across all of that so that they're chasing a similar audience in different formats, that was something that was greatly desired from the publisher side. And we're seeing some early promising results there.
Yeah, and it's great, in terms of, you described the Darwinism and the fragmentation and sort of the natural market forces that, by satisfying customer demands, lead to fewer players, bigger players, smaller players, and ultimately the market sorts itself out from natural market forces. And it sounds like, scale is a big part of this. And, scale obviously is the reason, in the multi-screen TV business for a ton of M&A activity, a ton of, programmer acquisitions and programming library acquisitions. And scale, of course, is, one of the most important words in the entire video ecosystem. Now, specifically, when you're now coming at the publishers with with these combined companies, what's that new scale? What are you able to do now that is more advantageous than you were previously? Specifically, what does that scale do for you?
Well, I think many things in the buy side, and we touched upon the omni-channel aspect of it. So instead of the former Telaria team going in and talking a mile deep about CTV and how they can meet those needs or the OTT needs, and then Rubicon coming in on the next sales call and saying, "Oh, we got your display and your audio handled, your digital out of home, we've got that too." Now you have one partner with one voice being able to address all the media needs. So that's obviously a pretty obvious advantage on the sell side, but as appealing is on the buy side. So although we are 100% focused on publishers, in order to do that, in order to help them with their monetization, we need to have very good relationships, very open, transparent relationship with the buy side. And so in talking with the buyers, that's exactly what they're looking for too. They don't want to work with 5 platforms to get the inventory of one media company. If they can find all the inventory on one platform, and maybe that platform doesn't compete with them and own a DSP, there's quite a bit of appeal. So by solving a lot of the publisher needs, you're also solving buyer needs, and it's creating that scale that you referenced, because you're right, that's incredibly important. The scale also comes in the fact that, trust me, having done this journey for a while, there's certain quarters where it's not a lot of fun being a public company. However, in this instance, this deal would have never happened if we weren't both public, and the combined assets and the balance sheet and the access to liquidity, and the idea that, boy, with this flight to safety and wanting to make sure you get paid for that programmatic guarantee deal or that auction deal, being able to see the balance sheet and watch our earnings on a quarterly basis, I think is a big advantage.
I think that's a great point. I mean, companies want to do business with companies that have got great business models, that are growing, that are in growth mode, that are in hyper growth mode, that've got stability, who's got strong fundamentals, and the ability to have that kind of win-win. From my perspective, when we think about partnering, you want to partner with a really strong company with a great idea that's got a great future. Let's talk about partnering now for a little bit. And it's been well embraced for a long time that automation, automated platforms, optimization, programmatic, all the different things that we see in terms of advantages of doing things in an automated way. When you have the ability to onboard a new publisher, to start a new relationship, what usually is the thing that takes someone from sort of a trial mindset? What's the aha moment that gets somebody from a trial mindset to pushing in the chips and saying, this is a great idea, we were right about this was a great trial, I want to expand, and how high is up? Is there like sort of one aha moment that happens in terms of results, or what do you see? How do you go from trial to real expansion with respect to your publisher clients?
Yeah, another great question. I think what we have seen in the very short period of time that I've been at the helm of the merged company, pretty unique backdrop, right? Upfronts, disruptive, if not forever changed, which I'd love to get your opinion on that. It seems like folks tend to go other side of the pendulum in terms of saying, oh, it will forever be different. And maybe that is the case or not, but we certainly is different this go round. So you're going from a sense of comfort in terms of what the normal cadence would be in terms of taking your media to market. And all of a sudden the marketplace is completely disrupted. So I think you're seeing a lot of folks that have a higher degree of, or a higher willingness for risk. Some folks equate, and you know this well, RTB, race to the bottom. And it will never happen in my TV world, because look at what happened in banners. And that's exactly where this is all going to, $1 inventory. And I think what folks have seen, so the aha moment, I think, is it's incremental. Folks dip their toe in the water, see that pricing doesn't evaporate, see that sometimes there's a lift in pricing, see that it's seamless, that the user experience isn't horrific. And in fairness to broadcast partners, 2 years ago, that wouldn't be the case. I mean, how many of us as consumers are like, if I see that ad one more time? And so the technology has evolved in the way of being able to accommodate podding much better, et cetera. And I think that folks find that the world didn't end. And boy, it was a pretty steady stream of revenue. I could turn it on instantly, could turn it off if I didn't want it. But boy, what a nice way to balance out what is a very choppy revenue stream right now. And that's, I think, what we're finding universally across the board. And I think the other revelation is most of it isn't open auction. Most of it is deals. Most of it is known advertisers looking for known content. And we just are kind of the dumb plumbing. We're the folks that make it happen, but we don't get out in front of sellers trying to sell their inventory for them. So I think the automation aspect of programmatic is going to play much greater role in the CTV OTT space than it perhaps did in the broader web digital space.
Yeah, so many moving parts, and an interesting thing in terms of orchestration of all those moving parts, for marketers trying to sell more products, for everyone in the equation, whether they be agencies or they be, multi-screen TV content publishers. And to your point, we've got, a marketplace that is evolving. The ideas of a futures-based marketplace is still extremely robust. It's a $20 billion, platform, but how we do it and what the levers are and what the combination is evolving, so rapidly, as it should, because the way that consumers are consuming all of this content is evolving so rapidly. Let's go to that for a second, that idea that, during this entire COVID period, there was, this reset idea with respect to, you saw consumers diving into, basically any and every form of video that they could get, multi-screen TV video content on. We saw so much more trial on all the different types of, CTV technologies, on OTT, on streaming, that type of thing. And we saw a lot of lift in linear viewing. Do you think that with respect to your company and your platform, in terms of the ability to have so much more, trial and experience and demand and comfort, do you think that accelerated the future with respect to just how much more attention and how many more, eyeballs, how many more leverageable, impressions and that type of thing are now spread across OTT and CTV and, devices like that?
Oh, without question. And, it's both there backed up by metrics and just by common sense, right? In a recessionary environment, you're looking to save money any way you possibly can. Cord cutting, no live sports has pushed a lot of people to discovery, looking at platforms that they normally wouldn't look at, programming that they normally wouldn't look at. And what we have seen is, obviously, there was a Nike swoosh-shaped adoption of CTV, OTT, and we've seen it kind of plateau and stay and hold. You also see the Plutos of the world, being owned by Viacom and Tubi by Fox, and the new programming being put on those platforms. So more better content is drawing more eyeballs. And I think that this is something that's going to be here to stay. I think the most interesting shift is the SVOD versus AVOD, right? And 2 years ago, it was clear the Netflix model was the model that everyone emulated. You can get someone to pay you $10 to $15 a month, no ads, life is good, get 300 million worldwide subscribers, and you're off to the races. And I think that folks realize that there is a fighting for that share of wallet. There's going to be winners, there's going to be losers, and you're going to need an awful lot of content and an awful lot of investment to be able to play that game. Whereas ad supported, it seems like, given the success of the Hulus, that consumers are comfortable with that and comfortable with that trade-off. And that I think is going to be a lasting trend as well, that every major media company is not looking at AVOD as, boy, we have to do it because aspirationally we can't beat Netflix at being Netflix. That they're going to say this is a very appropriate way to distribute content and something that's going to be quite successful.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, how this is playing out in real time, and it's playing out in dynamics. And to your point, there's been acquisitions of key providers by major multi-screen companies. As you look at that sort of that AVOD, SVOD jumble, if you will, going forward in terms of taking a look at when you're thinking about long-term strategic planning and everything from customer acquisition and that type of thing. Is there a way that you see this best playing out for publishers and for advertisers, and the ability to connect in the way that you can through your platform, AVOD versus SVOD, with respect to how do you think the next 24 months are going to play out in terms of the rising and falling and the trial of these innovations? How does this work strategically with where you see taking the company?
Yeah, I think, listen, obviously we don't have much of a play in the SVOD world. We are an ad technology company by definition, and being in the SVOD world, there's not really a role for us at this point. From what we have hearing from our partners and what we have just seen firsthand from the data and the metrics is that, I think there's several studies out there that what's the consumer's willingness to go into their pocket on a monthly basis for subscription streaming services. And I don't know, I've seen studies where it says that the number could be as low as $20 a month. That's going to, there's only going to be a handful of winners, right? By definition, if that's the consumer threshold. So I think that the AVOD world will be booming. Consumers have already raised their hand and said, this is how I like to consume content. This is by choice, and it's here to stay. And I think that the idea that every major media company will have an AVOD complement to an SVOD makes a ton of sense. I think what'll be interesting to see is if the rise of the platform world, right? The rise of the Rokus, the rise of Amazon's platform. Do you win the battle but lose the war? So you distribute your content as a media company, but you don't have a strong enough platform to bring eyeballs in yourself. So now you're going through gatekeepers once again, which was kind of the idea of going direct to consumer. Now have to go through gatekeepers like MSOs. So it's very interesting if it's going to play itself out again.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, you look at this concept of platforms, and you look at all the consolidation, and you look at all of the contents that's aggregating in these mega publishing houses. But to your point, you need both. You need both. This terrific compendium of programming that's highly compelling, that's episodic, and you need a big breadth of it. And you also need to be able to control your own destiny via connection to consumer distribution, multi-platform consumption, multi-platform, touch points and that type of thing. So a really, really interesting time. And, I think a great time to have, the technology and capabilities that your company has. And this is probably the hardest thing to do in this business is a little bit of, future gazing and prognosticating. But, as you're looking, down the road and you're thinking about, what's next best for your company, how do you see the next few years playing out for your new combined company? And, what are the things that you're most excited for, and that you'll look back and say, this is why we merged. This is why and how we got it right, because we saw X, Y, and Z coming.
Right. Well, I think the ultimate victory would be if the acceleration that we're already seeing in terms of linear to OTT to CTV and the advertising willingness to access that programmatically, and the increasing broadcaster willingness to use programmatic pipes. As you pointed out before, you're talking about the $70 billion US market alone. And that's always been, as you well know, that's been the elusive dollars that have never you always cited, but quite frankly, even Yahoo didn't really have a shot at those dollars, even with all the programming they were doing. So this is the first real shot for the programmatic industry to get access to those dollars. And we firmly believe that just like when we started AdMeld in 2007 and 95% of the revenue was direct sold and 5% was remnant network, and the direct sellers would never ever allow that to change. And lo and behold, you fast forward 7 years later and 90% of the revenue is coming from programmatic and 10% direct sold. And there is just no question history is going to repeat itself. Is that a 5-year arc? Is it a 3-year arc? But the fact is, I think it's been proven that our partners on the publishing side can go full in on programmatic and still guard the economics that they so rightfully fight for, but accommodate what the buyers are asking for. Because this is, simply put, it's a tough business running a media operation these days, and the idea of being able to work in a frictionless, automated, lower cost of goods sold model is in everyone's interest, publisher and buyer.
Thank you, Michael. It's been a joy just to reconnect with you and to hear what you're doing and to listen to the vision. And I'm not sure that either of us could have foreseen when I was at an advertising agency, running a whole slew of businesses, and you were top person at a publishing company for a title that was legendary but doesn't exist anymore, which we have to contemplate that in terms of change. Either of us could have pictured this conversation. I'm not sure that either of us could have pictured the contents of this conversation, but it is a really exciting time. It truly is. And I'm glad that, we're both here to see it through to its next phases, because what a ride it's been.
Yes, it has, man. It's been fun to do it with you, and so good to see you. I'm glad everyone's healthy and well.
All right. Best of everything, Michael.
All right. Take care, pal.